Good evening. Welcome to the Naperville Area Homeowners Confederation 2019-204 Candidate Forum. First, I'd like to thank you for taking the time. As we've discovered, there are a number of forums, and we do know you do good work, but thank you for taking the time for us and our constituents to get a better idea of who you are and what you can represent and better inform our voters. I'm going to turn right to the agenda just for our audience members and our audience at home. I'd like to tell you that we're going to start with some opening statements from the candidates. We're going to be starting from the left going to the right. Then we will ask them for answers to two prepared questions that are available on the agenda here and that we will make available on our information afterwards so people can see the written question, but I'll read them aloud as well. After that is the most important part. We have audience questions. This is a chance to interact and have people from the audience provide questions via note cards that our volunteers will make available. So raise your hand and a volunteer will come around, make the index card available to you, write down your question, and we will screen them. We do not censor. What we will do is if there's duplicates, we will combine them. And after that, I will provide a few closing comments because as I've realized, providing my comments at the end is like the teacher giving out information after the bell has rung. So I will do that and then your closing statements. And then we will be concluded for the evening. So with that, we would ask that everybody silence their electronic devices this evening and that we offer a level of decorum as we are very interested in finding out what these candidates have to present. And with that, we'd like to start with the opening statements. I'm going to start on the left, Natasha.
Thanks for having us here today. I am Natasha Grover, and service and public service and education has been a passion of mine. I've come to realize that education is the equalizer. I realized this with my dad. My dad grew up in India, and for him to obtain a higher education, he had to go to Germany. He did not have the funds, but he got a scholarship to Germany. He struggled because he didn't know a word of German. He persevered, got a degree, and created a better life for his family. Luckily, we live in this district where we have the resources and opportunities to give a good education to our kids. And that's why I moved into this district 18 years ago. I have 3 kids. My oldest graduated from NEQA in 2018. I have a junior at NEQA and a 4th grader at Welch. I've always been an active parent, and I was an art awareness teacher, science club judge, Ellis Island volunteer, started the multicultural club at Welch last year. 3 things are important to me. The first is that I want to grow the curriculum to meet the demands of the 21st century for our students. I want our students to be happy, and that's why mental health and well-being along with inclusion is important to me. And I understand that we have to fiscally manage our resources because funding is an issue. Professionally, I'm an attorney, and I've always devoted my time to public service. I worked for Department of Children and Family Services and worked at nonprofit agencies such as AIDS Legal Counsel and Legal Assistance Foundation, as well as performing pro bono adoptions. The board is a combination of my 2 passions. I was selected to be on the board in October 2018 when Lori Price resigned out of 32 applicants, and I would like to remain on the board and continue my service. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Hi, my name is Mark Rising, and first I'd like to thank the Confederation for having these forums and for what you do in our community. I first want to start with saying thank you to those that are watching and those that are in the audience. It has been my honor and my pleasure to be on the 204 Board of Education for the last 8 years. About me, I've been married for 23 years and in District 204 for 22 years. I've been actively involved in District 204 and have basically done everything you can think of in District 204, and that's on my website and my literature. Which is rising204.com. But the reason I ran 8 years ago is that we were going through a lot of struggles in our district. And I ran on 3 promises back then. One was to manage our money better. One was to increase our academic achievement. And the third one was better communication, because we had a lot of fighting within our district. Since that time, we have managed our money well. We have made over $35 million in spending efficiencies. We are known as one of the most efficient districts in the state, and we have reduced our administrators. Our academic achievement has achieved from year to year in the last 8 years, and our communication, 95% of our community gives us an excellent grade as far as our communication. Why I'm running this time? Obviously, it's still about finances, because that's very important to the district. But somebody that runs needs to have an understanding of our goals and our vision. But last but not least, a board member now needs to be an advocate for 204. I've been an advocate and a proven advocate at the state and the local level, and I hope to continue to do that, to be an independent voice and represent our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin?
My name is Justin Kubus, and I'm a school board member. I believe in public education. I believe in the district's mission to inspire all students to achieve their greatest potential. The district is 47 years old. I've lived in the district 46 years. I am a product of 204, having attended Clough, Hill, and Waubonsie. My mother was a teacher in the district. She taught at Hill, Granger, and Crone. My sister taught at Waubonsie. My father was one of the founding members of the Indian Prairie Educational Foundation. I served for 5 years on that foundation. I currently have students at Nequa, Crone, and Patterson. They're involved in chorus, band, musicals, swimming, soccer, orchestra, and cross country. I'm an attorney with 20 years experience that allows me to apply my skill in working on policy for the district. I've got 6 years experience as a board member. I'm a current vice president. I'm a hardworking board member, having attended 156 of 159 meetings. I've been on the board which has reduced costs by $25 million, that has reduced debt by 33%. I've modeled lifelong learning by engaging in professional development as a school board member. My name is Justin Kubus, and I want to continue as a school board member. Thank you.
Thank you. GB?
Hi, my name is Gautham Patia. My friends call me GB, so therefore Gautham GB Patia. Thanks to the Federation for setting this up. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you to all the colleagues here. I'm a challenger, right? And I came to the U.S. in 1990 as a student. I got my BA in computer science, math, and physics from Augustana College here in Rock Island, Illinois, just a couple hours west of us. And lived in several parts of the country, Tennessee, Minnesota. So if you notice a little bit of a Southern and Minnesotan accent, that's the reason, right? And it also exposed me to the cultures, the varied cultures within the U.S. itself. Besides just having finally a frame of reference of the Indian culture by being here, right? So, in Minnesota, I got my MBA in MIS and operations, and by profession, I'm a cybersecurity engineer. I've been serving our local community for quite a while. I'm a chairman and one of the founding members of the City of Aurora's Indian American Community Outreach Advisory Board. We've done events that are really key within our school district and are top of mind, such as youth mental health, diversity awareness. We even started a student scholarship fund. That's the experience that fueled my desire to run for the school board. And I will always put our students first. If elected, there are 3 key areas that I want to focus on. And as I mentioned, mental health support for students, teacher retention. We could be losing teachers to other school districts because of compensation. And fiscal responsibility. The proposed Route 59 corridor development and the $15 per hour minimum wage that has already passed the state, that's going to be a constraint on our budget, and I'm very concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to note that there was another challenger, Carol, that did message that she would be out of town. So I wanted to thank her for making that information available, and we will make her information available as well. So I'd like to move on to the prepared questions. We are going to actually start from the right, GB, with you, and move to the left for the first question.
Okay.
These are going to be 2 minutes long. The first one is, with multiple new residential developments in various planning stages in the Aurora and Naperville portions of the district, do you expect that redistricting will be necessary? If so, would you support implementing the changes now to balance the enrollments or waiting for the influx of new students before making the changes? What impact do you anticipate these developments will have on the district finances, and how would you address them? GB?
Lots of questions, right? So let's think of the current state of affairs, right? It's in the northern part of the school district above 75th Street. The schools are at or near capacity. Some kind of probably teaching a little bit over that, right, at Matea, et cetera. And then in the southern, when you go to the southern end, there's a lot more capacity. So there's just that as an evidence if we want to focus on reducing class sizes, which is one of the key things that came out from the 204, the discussions they had with parents. That was key to keep class sizes low. So just with that in mind, there would be a need to do so. And I think with the development that's going on, and there is some senior development, some housing development, single-family homes. So yeah, I think redistricting is certainly on the table, and I would support that. Yes, it's work, but none of us, I think, here are afraid of work. It's got to really mean doing the right thing at the right time, and that gets into the timing, whether to do it now or wait a little bit. I think redistricting is not something that can happen in a couple of weeks, nor should it take 2 years, right? It's part of the process of informing teachers, informing especially residents of what that would involve. The school district has software. It can easily tell who lives where, what kind of demographic and population. So using those, I think we should time it such that we are just a little bit ahead of the game, but not so far ahead that it causes undue stress too soon. We've got to inform all the stakeholders, keep their opinions in mind, and then also move forward. But some things I think redistricting would perhaps be really on the table. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin?
Do I expect redistricting will be necessary? I don't know. If you could tell me how many students are coming from those redevelopment, then I could tell you if we need to do redistricting. Redistricting is the second most contentious issue most of the time as a school board member. First one being a referendum. So you don't want to head down that path lightly. The interesting thing about redistricting is the parents complain about the capacity, but then they don't want to change schools. And that's interesting because it's a benefit because the parents are so invested in the schools. That's my school. I don't want to go. So redistricting is very hard. It's an emotional issue. It's a little easier to redistrict when you're not opening up schools. A golf course gets developed. What do you do with the marginal more kids? We are spending money transporting kids that would be saved if we were to redistrict. So we're building up this need to redistrict. We haven't reached that time, but there are a number of large developments potentially that need to get done, which would make it necessary. I don't think we're there yet. Obviously, Fox Valley is becoming an issue. Never planned for residential development, not part of the master plan in Naperville, not part of our demographic study. That would, and depending on the number of units, that would have a significant impact on redistricting. It might potentially involve new schools. So you can see the impact that would have on the community, and that's something we need to plan for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
So here's where experience matters in how you handle these types of things. The last time we had a boundary change was 2008 going into the 2009 school year, for those of you that remember. It's important to learn from our past and not make the same mistakes one could argue that were made in the past regarding this issue. I can't say that redistricting won't be necessary, but considering we don't know what's going to come out of some of the new developments, whether it be Wagner Farms or what potentially might happen at Springbrook or what potentially might happen with the Route Corridor 59 plan that Aurora's planning, it's hard to know what the future holds. Here's what I can tell you. In the last 6 years, we've done 2 demographic studies. The trend that we've been seeing is that out of new single-family homes, we're getting a third less students that we used to get, and we're getting 3 to 4 times the number of students from medium and high-density living that we used to get. The north part of the district is close to capacity. That's the facts. The south has room to grow. But you also have to remember, we're down 1,000 students from where we were 10 years ago. Where I am concerned is Patia Valley. They are at capacity. What I can tell you I will not support are additional shifts in the elementary school, because I think it is equitably unfair to some of the areas that get shifted around. As far as the financial impact that this could have on our district, it could be significant because we don't recognize or receive as much property revenue from property taxes out of medium and high density as we do from single family homes. So what I guess I'm saying is we have to monitor it, and the board has done that.
Thank you. Natasha?
So redistricting is a disruptive process for everyone involved, parents, communities, students. I actually lived in Tallgrass at the time when I saw the bridge being built, and people were excited because now their kids could bike to school to Nequa, and then lo and behold, redistricting happened and the kids went to Wabanzi. Saw the emotional toll that happened with that, and so it is a disruptive process, and I'd want it to be the last resort that we would go to. Last year we had to change boundaries for a couple of elementary schools in the north side, and it was an emotional situation with the parents, and it also cost us about $300,000 in transportation costs because we had to bus them to other schools. If we have to move students, I would prefer to do it in the elementary schools that the new development, the kids from the new development are coming from, rather than disrupt the kids that are already in the elementary schools. As Mark had mentioned, we had done a demographic study showing that there is a decline in the number of students we're going to get, and so we just have to wait and see. What we have seen is that whatever the developers have told us the number of kids we're going to have is never correct. We usually get about 2 to 5 times more than they say. So we just have to be cognizant of that and just watch what happens, but I'm not in favor of redistricting unless it's a last resort. Thanks.
Thank you. This time we're going to start with you, Natasha, and move to the right. Second question is, City of Naperville is in the process of engaging a consultant to update the community's comprehensive development plan for the community. Part of this plan is the development or redevelopment for vacant land and underutilized buildings and tracks. As a board member, what input would you provide this consultant for areas within the district? Natasha?
So our school is heavily impacted by 3 things: the nature of developments, whether it's commercial or residential, Second is the type of residential. Is it high density, medium density, low density? And the other one is TIFs, or tax incentives that we give developers. So as a school board, we've had to handle the situation with the Aurora Fox Valley Route 59 corridor complex. Right now, we are not fully funded. We are at 80% funding that we receive, and we get about 13% from state and 80% from property taxes. So what I would like to tell the developers, consultants, is I'd like to see a mix of of housing with commercial property, because with high density housing, you tend to get more kids. People move to our district because of the schools. So regardless of whether you have a single family house or a high density house, you're going to have the same number of kids. People are willing to give up living in a single family house if their kids can go to our school district. The other thing I think is important to realize is the tax incentives. Developers should not give TIFs to the city should not give TIFs to the developers, because it suffocates the school district. Where are we going to get our money from? And we rely on that money. If you want to give an incentive, you can do a sales tax revenue incentive, or I rather prefer a property abatement, where at least we do get some funding and we can say that it's going to be for a short period of time, whereas in a TIF, it's 23 years, and after 23 years, actually, you can do another 12 years. And if you don't catch that TIF within that 23-year period when it's coming off the books, it's just automatically renewed, kind of like your magazine subscription. So you have to be aware of what is going on. We have to be vocal. We are doing that. Thank you. Oh, that's okay.
Right? He's precise. It's Navy timing. Mark?
So let me first say that Naperville is a great city, but I will also say that Illinois sucks as a state. For those of you that don't know, Illinois funds public education 50th in the country, the worst by far, not even close. 23% average that they fund public schools. The average in the country is about 45 or 46%. Our district is at 78% of adequate funding. That equals to $80 million that we are short as a district of doing what we need or should be doing as a district. To give you an example, 203 is at 117% of adequacy compared to 78% of adequacy. Where's the difference? Schools are funded by EAV, Equalized Assessed Value, and that's based on all the property wealth, whether it be commercial, residential, everything that's within the area. 203 has a lot more commercial, and they have a lot less medium and high density. 204 has less commercial and more medium and high density. Then you take that number and you divide 28,000 kids versus 203's 16,000 kids. So you can see where the disparity is. I have wonderful relationships with the mayor of the city of Naperville and all the city council members. I've talked to them about this issue. What I tell them is 204 wants commercial, commercial, commercial. It helps our district. It reduces or keeps level the capacity of the students, and it helps our revenue. So that would be my response, and that's what I would do, and I've advocated for this already, and I will continue to do so with the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Justin?
Fortunately, the city of Naperville and 204 have great working relationships. We communicate, we partner. Unfortunately, 204 bridges mainly two cities, so we need to balance Aurora and Naperville. Unfortunately, we do not have the same working relationship with Aurora. Naperville takes the opinion of the schools very seriously in any developments. Generally, things don't come out of planning commission unless the schools support it. Aurora does not have a similar process. Naperville's process can be improved a little bit. We're all learning about making the redevelopment process a little quicker. changing the plan is a great idea. Engaging a consultant is a great idea. It's sat on the shelf long enough. We need to update it. And I think that's part of the consternation we're getting from some of the residents is that the plan sets the expectations. The economy has changed. Community has changed. So we all need to come together and figure out the new expectations. I support an update in the plan. The input I would give from the school district is our demographics, our capacity, and some of the differences between 203, 204. Trying to provide more of a balance. For example, Naperville needs to put in more affordable housing. Where's that affordable housing going to end up? Mark talked about the finances. We don't want to become a tale of two cities, so to speak. So Naperville needs to work on balancing the needs of both districts and understanding our finances. And everybody needs to understand the TIF situation that's happening in 59. Thank you.
Thank you. Gautham?
Good points. I think what I would advise the consultant who's working with the city of Naperville is to learn from errors that have happened in the recent past with lack of communication. I live in the city of Aurora. I've been there 10 years. Over the period of time with my community work, I've built relationships with the alderman whom I spoke with today. I recently, just about 15 minutes ago, got a text from an alderman about certain facts. So I think some additional information is needed on both sides, which goes to the issue of communication. And it's clear that that has been lacking in this case. That's one of the key things I would advise the consultant, is to communicate with all the stakeholders. And as Justin said, since that's happening really well, continue to do so. Now I also think we need to have a bigger tax base. I would want certainly more commercial development. But there's usually sometimes a good balance. Wagner Farms is going to be, what about 350 single-family homes, right? That's going to have kids. So to balance the property taxes, the expenses for additional students, if we have a lot more commercial, a lot more retail, that increases the tax base. That also creates jobs. So all around, everybody benefits. Nobody wants TIFs. But if that's the case, I think I like to look at a bigger picture and say our community consists of all of these factors: residential, commercial, retail. So we need to keep all of that in mind as we balance our approach. And I'd like that consultant to really keep that in mind, look at the bigger community.
Thank you. Now we are going to move on to the audience questions. And I am telling you, after doing a few of these forums, I am continually impressed by the quality and the nature of the questions that we get. So some of these are tied together. I'll try to keep a stream of consciousness going, but there may be some back and forth a little bit. I want to make sure I get to these. First one, for this, we're going to do a series of rotations per question. Since we started left to right and right to left, Mark, we're actually going to start with you and move to the right. So Natasha, you'll be the last to answer this one. What is your opinion of how our district has handled staff training preparedness for the potential of school violence? What, if anything, would you do differently or better? Mark?
First of all, I'll answer it in the most simple terms, is I think we've done an incredible job. Just this year, we've implemented ALICE training. We had the police departments from both Naperville and Aurora participate in that training with our staff. We first started out with administrators, then went down to the teachers at all the different levels. And we've handled it by the different levels. So we didn't give across-the-board training. We first trained the high school, then the middle schools and the elementary schools, so they could all relate to their individual situations as it related to their building. For those of you that don't know, District 204 hired one of the Naperville's retired lieutenant police officers, and his job is solely on the security and the safety of our district. He has created extensive plans that we can't share with the public because of security issues, but the area that I would improve, and it's not the staff training because I think we are already doing an incredible job there. We have a bunch of plans already lined up for the buildings. But where I would like to see improvements is camera monitoring at our middle school and our elementary school level. I think that would help tremendously, especially with some things that have happened in the past. Thanks.
Thank you. Justin?
Did this question come from Kathy Pease? No. I agree with a lot of what Mark said. I think staff training is pretty well. I think we've gotten to the point now where we need to make some more hardware improvements. The schools weren't designed for the kind of security we're living in. We've done some additions with locks and cameras, but I think we're going to need to take it to the next level. There's been proposals in Springfield to add metal detectors at every door in every school. Another mandate that's totally unreasonable and unnecessary, and how are you going to put 3,000 kids in a high school in a morning going through a metal detector? But there's other ways to make it more secure and more safe, but I think we're moving beyond staff training. That's a good initial step. I think we need more investment in the hardware in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. GB?
Good points. To add to it, I mean, this was one of the key issues that came up from the Engage 204, right? Securing locations. So not surprised by the question. The ALICE training was a good program. I think we also, when I go to visit a middle school in 204, I've gone to a high school too, where I found during the day I could get a whole lot easily buzzed in than should happen. So I think there's always room for improvement. I think some of that, my personal experience, and while it could be an anomaly, I would think that I wouldn't want anybody just walking in. Is there a way to improve that process? And I guess with hardware that may be possible. When my kids were in a Montessori, it was a lot harder. They had codes. Parents had codes. Is that something that can be implemented? Is it cost effective? Is it the appropriate thing to do? I think that's a little bit to be discussed. But one of the key things was for me, I want to advocate on the security side and the handling how kids get questioned. While not exactly it's direct security issue for a facility, but it's part of the security handling. And when there's a crisis, having a parent involved or a guardian involved when the high schoolers are questioned. I think we've had that issue, so I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha? Yeah, audience questions are 90 seconds.
If it's 45 or 90, okay. So although the question concerns staff training, I'm going to address training as well as safety in a bigger issue. So regarding the staff training, we'd had mandatory online training that was completed in 2017, and then that was followed by actual training, the mandatory complete scenario-based training, the ALICE training. And as Mark had mentioned, we hired a coordinator of safety, security, and emergency preparedness, and he has over 30 years of experience. And one of the things that he does is he reads about safety concerns in other schools. So when Parkland happened, he read the report, and one thing that came out of the report that we did now change in our schools was that when the fire drill happened, the kids heard the fire drill, and just left immediately. So now what we do is when you hear a fire drill, you don't just leave. You leave, and when you come to a juncture, you look, you listen, and then when you see there's nothing in the scenario, then you exit. So little things like that are very important. The other thing is we have the safety dog that comes through high school, and it detects gunpowder as well as any drugs. We also have lockdowns, and right now there's a state law that has passed that within the first 90 days you have to have active shooter training. And today actually was lockdown training at my kids' high school. And I have to say, as a board member at NEQA, when October there was a threat at NEQA, and as a parent I would have been worried, but because I was a board member I wasn't worried because I knew how great our safety was. And my son texted me and I was like, are you okay later on? And he said, yeah, I'm going to Chipotle. So just to tell you, I feel very secure with what we have. We changed our locks, and so feel very good as a board member. Thank you.
Thank you. We are still getting very good questions from the audience. If we do run out of time, I will read the questions and make them available to each candidate if they would like to respond via social media, Facebook, and so forth. Next one. This one, Justin, we're going to start with you and move to the left. As the demographics of the special needs student population changes, what is your biggest priority in assuring those students' needs are met in the terms of individual education, preparation for employment, preparation for independent living? Justin?
That's interesting. I'm not exactly sure what is meant by the change in demographics of the special needs population. But ultimately, the schools need to provide services both before and after K through 12 to the special needs population. That's one of the areas I think we have room for improvement. We have what we call a STEP school, which services kids after they graduate high school and before they turn 22. We've gone through some transitions with personnel and location. Both of those areas, I think, have improved, and we're still searching for a resolution that is fiscally responsible, gives the appropriate programming, and is acceptable to the students going through it. I think overarching, we're moving towards, they talk about IEPs for kids with special needs. I think we're moving towards a point where every student is going to get an individual education plan. And so it's almost like that part of special needs education becoming inclusive in the general population. And I think that that's a good goal overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Mark?
If I ask you to repeat the three things, does that start my time? Okay.
No, it does not.
Okay, just checking.
As the demographics of the special needs student population changes, what is your biggest priority in assuring these students' needs are met in the terms of individual education, preparation for employment, and preparation for independent living?
Okay, so I actually have a lot of experience in this area. I was telling you, I've done a lot of things in the district. Before I was on board, I was the vice president of the special needs PTA in the district, so I know a lot of these parents who have students in our transitions program. And as Justin mentioned, those are students that have moved on from our district and are between the ages of 18 and 21 who have special needs, and we are required by the state to provide a transitional program for those students. The needs that they have right now and what I have supported and will continue to advocate for, and I say this with a preface because I can support something, we can all support something, but having the knowledge and being able to do it within the budget is a different thing. I would like to get the STEP students out of where they're currently at and get them in their own facility, and I think we have the means to do that as a district. As far as their training goes, we hired a principal for the STEPS program, and the current principal is creating and is implementing a 30-step training program for our STEPS students so they can go out and work in the workforce and have some skills that they can report to their employer that they have completed. As far as independent living, I think that comes with a new location where we can start to train those students how to live on their own, some of the things to expect. Right now, we are doing some of that training, but I think we could take it to the next level as far as the independent living goes. Thanks.
Thank you. Natasha?
So in regards to the STEPS program, we hired a director of special services, and she was able to get a grant for the PACE lab, which is where now in the STEPS program, what they realized is the young adults from STEPS are currently being placed in different jobs, such as Aurelio's Pizza or Walgreens. However, when they transition out of the program when they're 22, those places don't want to hire these people on a full-time basis. And what they learned is that they don't mind having them when they're young adults in the process, but not as full-time employees, because they don't, for instance, if you're at McDonald's, don't wrap things as quickly time-wise. So this PACE lab allows you to work on your different vocational skills, and you get timed. So it's like a real job. You clock in, you clock out, and you're timed. So this is the first step. This is the first time it's being implemented. And the reason is to make these young adults independent. And the other thing that the STEPS program does, it has young adults have businesses. And it's helped them create web businesses to sell items. And so it's really working with them to try and make them more independent. So the first step, I think, will probably have a job, and then after that, it will be transitioning them to housing.
Thank you. Gautham?
Always a disadvantage to go last, right? So I'll just probably answer it by saying everything everybody said, right? But yesterday, there was another forum at NEQA. I happened to speak with an individual who is part of the STEP program as an administrator. And what I learned is that there's significant concerns about stepping back into one facility. Now it's gone from 1 to 2 to 3 and come back. So there's some history there, but yeah, absolutely. This is a program that definitely needs additional funding, a better facility so that we can take care of our special needs population and make them contributing members of society, right? I think that's really the key thing there is how do we take these individuals and make them contributing members. So I fully support that. And I look forward to, if I'm on the board, working with all the stakeholders to enhance the program as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. This one I'm not going to ask for a reply on because I think actually all of you touched on it, but I want to read the question as is in case you want to address it in a closing comment. Asking as a parent and a staff member, I'm certain all candidates are aware of the issues with the STEPS program. Please name your top 3 priorities and timeline for implementing those changes to STEPS. I think a number of those were addressed, and so I just wanted to make sure that it was mentioned, and then if you have a chance you want to reply that directly, you could add that to your closing comment. This was talked about a little bit, maybe a chance to delve into it a little bit deeper. For this one, Natasha, we're going to start with you and move to the right, my right. The City of Aurora is reviewing the development along Route 59. Part of the review involves a TIF, development of a multi-unit housing. How would you handle additional students without receiving additional money to support the increase? Realize you guys talked on it, but again, I think this development is a big topic here, and I'd like to maybe if you want to spend a little time on it.
So I had gone to the corridor open house, and so the school board is really vocal on discussing this issue. I also attended the Aurora meeting that we had in the city, and the plan that the developers were showing the proposal was actually different than what the school board knows of it For instance, they were saying that we were not going to have that many kids coming out of the high-density residences, which is incorrect. We get a lot of kids from the high residency places. Regarding the TIF, very against it, because what happens is the Fox Valley Mall area will get all the funding. It'll go back to them. But the property taxes, we won't get any of that increment funding for the school district, because we get taxed. We get our funds from the property taxes. But if those funds cannot be given to us, then our school district suffers. What's going to happen to the kids? That's the problem, because we spend about $12,000 on each kid. That's our admin cost for each kid. And so we've asked the city, well, are you going to give us that much money for each kid? Because if we're in Chesapeake Landing, for instance, we were supposed to get 100 kids, but we ended up getting like 200 kids. So it is a big issue. I'm more for something like a property abatement, where the developers still pay us the increment in taxes. So that's what I would ask for rather than TIF, which is 23 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, just a note, when you're done with your microphone, if you could hit the button, there's only so many that we can have live. But Mark?
Could you just repeat it again? It had to do with
Sure.
the students, right? Yeah.
Yep. City of Aurora is reviewing the development along Route 59. Part of the review is the valley's possible TIF. Development of multiple unit housing. How would you handle additional students without receiving additional money to support the increase?
Okay. So I talked about being an advocate. I've actually gone to the Aurora Planning Council meetings for the past year every single week. And that's where we're volunteer members, but we have to protect our community and our district as being school board members as well. So I've kind of been in their face about this issue for the past year. How I would handle the students and where they're going to go and the financial impact is on their plan that they, after a year with the district trying to work with Aurora, they didn't tell us the number of units that they were planning. Now, there's a 20-year plan, but there's an initial 5-year plan. That first 5-year plan has 6 apartment buildings in the Sears parking lot, which equals 920 units. 920 units. We don't have the room for those kids. Now, we still have an open dialogue with the city of Aurora, and we gave them a few choices. We said, give us money for every student that comes out of there if you're going to do a TIF. They said, how much is that? We said $12,700 a kid per year. Well, yeah. Okay, give us a school. Well, we'll give you land for, no, give us a school, because we can't build a school without a referendum. So we're still in dialogue. There is nothing concrete or set in stone that's going to come out of the 59 development yet as far as units. So we will continue to have a dialogue, work with them, share our numbers with them, and hopefully there can be some compromise that won't hurt our schools. Thanks.
Thank you. Justin?
Focusing on how would we handle the students, we would do it like we do every other time. We would do an awesome job with it. We got a history of that. We do more with less, and we've got a great track record doing it. So regardless of what happens with the TIF, regardless of the numbers, we would take that in and do a good job with it. Eventually you hit a breaking point. And so what you're hearing up here is advocacy to try to get ahead of it so it doesn't happen. The TIF is going to freeze the property value for Fox Valley. Then money's going to get pumped into the system. And as the property values generally increase, our budget gets spread out throughout that amount. But it's not going to impact the Fox Valley Mall, which is the largest landowner in 204, the largest taxpayer in 204. So we're going to freeze that value. We're talking generally here. There's still specifics to be worked out. And because we straddle 2 cities, that's going to impact Naperville's taxpayers. So what's happening in Aurora is going to impact Naperville houses. So what's Naperville City going to do? They're going to probably respond in kind. And then we fall further behind in our spending per average, and we continue to do more with less, and we continue to become more of a tale of 2 districts in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. GB?
Yeah, big concerns with the development. You know, I live just a mile from the Fox Valley Mall, and we also, so really valid points. Just another perspective here is, what if there is no development? There are already 2 flagship stores that have closed down, right? The Fox Valley Mall. So there's some sales tax revenue that's declined in the city of Aurora. If development is not done, and I think none of us are opposed to economic development, it's got to be appropriate. It shouldn't be a burden on residents. So all those points are really valid. But let's think, if that development doesn't happen, then what happens to the area? If another store closes, if there's that decline, that's sort of a sliding scale at this point then, right? And property values will then start to decline. And that then results in less property taxes for the school district. Communication is key, and I think Mark hit it really well. I alluded that I think it should have happened a little bit sooner between the city of Aurora and the school district. So a split, as the city of Aurora is doing for the school district with redevelopment in downtown Aurora, I believe it's about an 80-20 split, 20% goes to the school district. That it would be the best meeting of the minds, middle ground, because money is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, Gautham, start with you and move to my left. As concussions become a larger and larger issue, potential legal liability grows, how do you feel about continuing tackle football program?
Yeah, my son wants to be a receiver in the NFL. So I took care of his college savings and just stopped that, because that's what he's going to do. Yeah, everything has a risk. I actually support the idea that it stopped in middle school, that, there's no more tackle football in middle school, which is where my son is in Fisher. But I think if we have better equipment, some additional safety rules, the NFL has been better at it, that knowledge and experience should be replicated in the high schools. And I don't think tackle football should be stopped at the high school level. And that's what I would support that to continue. Things are, even with the risks involved, I think we need to better educate our coaches and have better equipment, and also have better rules for avoiding concussions. So thank you.
Yep. Justin?
I don't see it as a liability issue. I'm an attorney. I don't see lawsuits and numbers affecting the schools, but it's a human issue. It's an impactful issue. I think concussions are serious. They're ongoing. It's brain damage, and you might have injuries now. You might have injuries many years later. I think there's enough. Obviously, it's a community issue. If the community supports it, there'll be demand for the sport. But I think the numbers are down, and less and less people are going into football. And I think there's many alternatives. We've got lacrosse that is being offered in our district. Another one's that could grow is field hockey. Our demographics have changed, that cricket can be introduced in our schools, and we could probably beat 203. So I think we should go into the cricket direction. No, but you got to service your community, and there are alternatives. So I think there's some opportunity there to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
So as a school board member, our boss is the community. Our boss are the voters. And I think every area is different, right? So the parents know the risk. like Justin had mentioned, our football numbers are down over the past few years. But there are still some programs at certain high schools where the numbers are good. So, you know, what it really comes down to for me is that we're taking all the precautions, and we're required to have liability insurance. Obviously, there's, you know, the students and the parents know the risks involved. But what the state, and specifically our school district, has got a lot better at is they have to follow a certain concussion protocol and make sure that they're monitoring those things, and they can't let the student go back and play if they show signs of a concussion. So again, I don't feel that, I think our community still wants a football program. If I hear that they don't, that might be a different story, but I think we as a board and as a district are taking all the precautions that are needed. Thanks.
Thank you. Natasha?
I think we have to see what the community wants. I know my daughter was in marching band in Niqua, and the football was a big program. I mean, football is a big thing on Fridays. It's go watch the teams play football. You know, Niqua versus Waubonsee was the thing. So we have to ask the parents, do you want your children in football? We have to see the data. We do have the concussion protocol, and the concussion protocol is not just ready to play, but it's ready. Are you ready to learn too? Because that's, I think, what people forget sometimes. When you have a concussion, oh, you're okay, you can go back to play, but are you okay? Can you still go back to school? How injured are you? And we have given training now. All the athletic trainers have been trained on the concussion protocol. But I think we have to ask the community what they want, because that's what it boils down to. See how many kids are still interested, and see the data on what is the injury of the elementary school, of the middle school kids, how are they being injured, and because what are the numbers and statistics on that?
Thank you. This one's a little long one, so bear with me a little bit, but very important. On this one, I'm going to start with you, Mark, and go to my right. So Justin, I'll be you. In order to avoid the problem which occurred in District 203 when a student committed suicide after questioning by school authorities, what safeguards would you consider appropriate to prevent that type of situation in District 204? Mark?
Well, let me first start by saying, and I will try not to get emotional, but I experienced this as a parent. There was a situation that happened with my family and with one of my children, and what I can tell you is that when an issue happens with a student, from the direction from our administration down to our schools, as far as our principals and our school resource officers, I know and I can confidently say that we handle it appropriately and take the emotional state of the student in mind when we question them. Now, so says the state of Illinois, the district does not need to contact a parent and have a parent present when they're questioning a student. But I have the confidence in our principals and our school resource officers. Now, there's bills out there that will require the parents to be there. I can tell you in my case and in my situation, I was there in that particular case because we got called back to school. We weren't at school. So I went with my child. So I'm confident we're taking the appropriate steps, but again, none of us as board members want to see what happened with a student like happened in 203. So we'll watch that. Thanks.
Thank you. Justin?
2 points. Part of being a board member is knowing your role, and I'm not a teacher, I'm not an administrator, I'm an attorney. I'm not sure you want me to be giving direction and telling people that are smarter than me what to do about student discipline, potentially criminal activity. I know my boundaries. I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. And so I would lean on administration to make a recommendation on that. That's my first point. Second point is there is new legislation that would require parental involvement, or a social worker or a licensed medical professional to be involved in that. But it's a difficult area to deal with because you're going from discipline to alleged criminal activity, and it's a sliding spectrum of behavior and punishment. Schools are trying to keep people out of the criminal system, restorative justice, and then at some point it switches the line, and there's not a clear demarcation in the line. We have student resource officers in our school to assist with that, and at some point it becomes a detention, becomes into custody. And so my concern would be helping everybody understand where that line is. The bill can be improved with public safety issues. If there's really a public need for public safety, then we should be allowed to question people and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Gautham.
Yeah. Obviously, this is a sad situation that happened. I have no doubt that people are really trying to do the right thing. The resource officers and administrators and principals, it turned out sadly, right? And we want to take steps to never let that happen again. I have mixed feelings, about this. If pushed, I would say for me, it would be, I would want a parent or a guardian there beyond a certain point. When that switch happens from alleged criminal activity, when it's in that realm, rather than threats of having permanent records on the system and trying to scare a young child, I think when that conversation switches, I think the resource officers and the principals need to make a judgment call and involve the parent. I personally would advocate for that. I would definitely want to make sure that we learn from the errors of others, right? And try and prevent that. And hopefully that line doesn't go way so far that, there are, for every little thing, parents are coming in, right? So it's a qualitative judgment. That's what we need to focus on.
Thank you. Natasha?
So when that happened, it hit home because my son is the same age, and I could see my son in the same situation doing something stupid and then not knowing what to do and freaking out. And boys actually develop later, their brain part develops in their 20s. So they already don't have that maturity to react. It's true. But,
Or never.
No, but what I'm saying is you have to take in the person and what the situation is. And in that situation, legally, we have Miranda rights. We say you have a right to an attorney. And I think in that situation, the way it was presented, in his mind, he did a criminal activity. He thought he was perceived as he did something criminally wrong. Perhaps in the principal's mind and the officer's mind, they weren't perceiving as such. So in that situation, I think he should have had a parent or a guidance counselor. I think we need to give training to the principal and the student resource officer to say what is an emergency. If there's a emergency, direct emergency, somebody's going to get harmed, then you can question the person without the parent. But in that situation, there was not an emergency. There was not an imminent threat that was happening to another student. And because there wasn't an imminent threat, I think you should have had, he should have had his parent or someone else with him.
Thank you. And yes, to the strength of the school counselors. So that's what I'm going to combine with two of them a little bit. What do you believe sets you apart from the other candidates, and what specific strength would you bring to the board if elected or re-elected? And right now, Justin, I'm going to start with you and move to the right, to my left.
I don't think you'll find somebody that has the experience in the district. I'm an alum. I've got kids in the system. You know, my parent taught in the system. My sister taught in the system. The depth of knowledge I have about the district sets me apart. We have the district's maturing. Buildings are aging. People are retiring. In order to keep the high quality education we have, we need somebody that understands where we've been so that we can get to a good future without stubbing our toes. So having the perspective, I was born in Naperville. There was 20,000 kids, and we've got 20,000 residents. There's a couple more. There were 5 schools in the district when I was going through the district. I live in the south side of Naperville. I grew up off 87th Street. They bused me all the way to Hill, north end of the district. And I think that was an even quicker commute than it is now. You know, I mean, so I think understanding some of the history of where we've been, it makes me a strong candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
I would say first and foremost, you know, I told you I've been on board since 2011. I've never missed a school board meeting. But I've been actually going to school board meetings since 2007. So, you know, 4 years before I was even elected. And I could probably count on 2 hands how many meetings I missed in that time. I would say that now with school districts, everything comes down to how you manage the money and finances. And I think I understand our budget inside and out, how we're funded. And I would say the last thing, as I mentioned in my opening, is that I consider the school board job like a full-time job. I mean, there is a lot of time that's involved. And the role has changed. Yes, while we are still an advocate for our parents, we need to be an advocate out in the community. And if a board member isn't willing to do that or develops the relationships to be that advocate for our school district and the community, then they shouldn't be doing this role. And my board has nominated me to be our advocate at the state level for the last 5 years, and I've done that. But I pay attention to what's going on in the community and the state level because we need to fight for our school district in this state. Thanks.
Thank you. Natasha?
First, as a mom, I understand the schools. I'm always in the schools, active in the schools, so I see directly how the policies are affecting my child, especially she's in elementary school. Give you an example, I saw that there was a bullying issue in the school and I implemented a cultural awareness project in 5th grade. This was 6 years ago and it's still being done at Welch. Secondly, I've always been about public service. My whole career as an attorney has been working in the public service field. I currently work for Social Security, and prior to that worked for Department of Children and Family Services and public defender at the Mental Health Division. So it's always been about public service. I've worked a lot with children. I've been a mentor at Gavel Club, worked at DCFS, and I was a volunteer teaching assistant for 2nd grade. So my analytical skills from being an attorney, as well as my relationship building skills, working with a diverse group of people through my nonprofit work with AIDS Legal Counsel, Legal Assistance Foundation, has given me a lens to see things in a different manner. I see it both as a compassionate person as well as an analytical person, and I can learn things really quickly. Already with the finances, I've learned things on a macro level, and working in the government sector, you learn that you have to do everything because you don't have anybody doing anything for you.
Thank you. Gautham?
Yeah, thank you. I love this question. I wish we had 10 minutes each. So what's the job of a leader, right? And I'm the parent and for the person on the outside looking in, right? The key thing is the board needs to make a few key decisions that have big impact. That's one of the, the roles of the board. So, and I'll take this approach that the election cycle that's staggered 3 and 4. What it's meant to do is have a certain little bit of change within the school board, and that's what I bring in. The innovation. I'm a technologist by heart, and I always think in terms of people, process, and technology, and how I can impact that if I'm on the board. And what I'll ask people here, and even people if they're watching, is that just go to YouTube and Google Jeff Bezos and think of the three things that he a day that he advocates to do. It's a 2.5-minute video, and what it teaches is being innovative, right? And that's what I bring to the table. And my experience in technology, my background in computer science, math, and physics, my training as an MIS and an MBA in MIS and operations, all of that experience, those qualifications is my strength that I would bring to the board and have a different perspective. There's nobody on the currently on the board with my kind of background. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to do one final question, and then my closing comments, and then your closing statements. Touches on a subject we had mentioned before, but I think it's to a little bit more of the heart and a personal response. On this question, we are going to be starting with you, Natasha, and moving to my right. What experience do you have with special education? Are you a parent of are you a parent? Visited a classroom? Volunteer within special needs community? That's the question.
So the first thing I did when I got on the board, as I told you, I'm about building relationships. That's what I do, and being an advocate for all. I've volunteered in nonprofit agencies, and so one of the first things I did was take a tour of the STEPS program because I was unfamiliar with it. And taking a tour of the STEPS program, I realized what they needed, what they were doing, how things were working for them, and was explained about their housing situation, where they transferred from. So I'm going to continue seeing what the program is, how it's helping them, because our duty as a board member is to inspire all kids to achieve their greatest potential. So my relationship with the STEPS program or special needs is by visiting that program. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark?
So I told you I've been an extremely involved parent. Way before I was on school board, besides getting involved in the PTAs, I was involved in the Diversity Council in the early years in 2007, 2006. But I told you that I was a vice president of the Special Needs PTA. In fact, the reason my family moved to this district, District 204, is because we knew when my wife was pregnant that there was a high likelihood we would have a child with special needs. We looked at different districts who had incredible programs for special needs students. Both my students had IEPs. I was special needs VP, and I still keep in contact with many of those parents. So I would say that background, my understanding, when I was on the Special Needs PTA, I was, along with my fellow board members, we started and created the Special Needs Resource Fair in District 204, which is still growing strong and was just this past weekend at Patia. So I keep my pulse on what's going on with those parents, with the issues that they're facing, and I hope, as well as with the rest of our district, I hope that I prove to them that I'm an advocate for them. Thanks.
Thank you. Justin?
I am not a parent of a special needs education student. I don't currently volunteer in that area. I would mention that we do need to represent all students, and so part of being on the board is you learn all the little nooks and crannies of the district. Even though I've lived here for 46 years, you learn more and more about it, and campaigning forces you out of your comfort zone, and you learn more and more about it. I was impacted when I was 16. There's a newspaper article I posted on my Twitter account that talks about when I volunteered for the Special Olympics swimming, which was at Wabanzi. And, I was dealing with all the trials and tribulations of being a 16-year-old, and I was helping out for the Special Olympics, and there was an individual that had to be wheeled into the water, had no legs, and they swam a race with just arms, and that impacted me so much that I take that personally, and then from that it's branched out to at-risk kids, low-income kids, and that was my foray into the foundation where I threw my needs. So I've got I was an article in the Naperville Sun from when I was 16 where I was impacted by it. Thank you.
GB?
Yeah. So the city of Aurora has advisory boards. I've been the founding member and chairman for the last 3.5 years of the Indian American Community Outreach Advisory Board. Long name, I didn't pick it. The one thing that we've been chartered to do, we do some fun cultural stuff like the Diwali program at Wabanzi. We've been doing it for the last 5 years, right? Which a lot of people attend, and board members have attended as well. As part of that community outreach board, we've done events with multiple groups in the area focused on diversity awareness, where actually the superintendent came, many principals came. We did that at Wabanzi. The other thing was youth mental health. In coordination with Sanjeevani for You, which focuses a lot on the Asian Indian community that has mental health issues. Kids Matter, 360 Youth Services, with all these organizations. And that's, going back to my opening statement, those are the things that really fueled my desire to run for the school board. And I'm going to continue to do that. In fact, we've got one planned for the third week of April, right? So yeah, a decent amount of experience in that arena, and I want to continue to help our population in that area. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to start with closing comments, but one last question did sneak in. A school board member leaves Patia traveling at 25 miles per hour, and another leaves Neuqua Valley traveling.
Good luck.
In all seriousness, I do want to thank all of the candidates and their families, because this is time taken away, and it's that public service that we at the Naperville Area Homeowners Confederation can't be more proud of. We'd like to thank the city, NCTV, that's done all the broadcasting, all the great work, made it seamless for us to do this. We do community outreach, and I know there's been a number of forums. We'd like to talk to all the others and about coordination, because our motto is neighbor helping neighbor. And with the responsibility that the board members have, that you guys have with the budget and everything that our teachers and our administration and our students, we take it very dearly. And we just want to make sure everybody understands the importance we feel about this. So again, thank you. I'm going to start with closing comments, 2 minutes for each. And then there was one last question we will make available to you. I think it'll lend right into the closing comment. As a school board member, what legacy would you like to have for your tenure on the board? But again, why don't we go right into closing statements? And I'm actually going to start with Natasha and go back. That way it gives you a chance to be at the end of it and be able to think of the answers in case there's any rebuttals. Natasha?
So thank you again. So I have witnessed the collaborative nature of being on the board. We are a great team, and we all have the same intent, which is to make sure that our kids are doing the greatest, to inspire their kids to do their greatest potential. The first thing I did when I was on the board, I visited schools that I was unfamiliar with. I visited Indian Plains, I visited the STEPS program, the Title I program, and the reason I did that was because I wanted to know not just the schools that my kids went to, but the entire district, because I'm here to represent the entire district. As an attorney, I have drafted policies and state programs and looked at state programs to see if they meet federal regulations. I've worked with a diverse group of people, and so I have built relationships and know how to continue building relationships. There were a lot of questions about the STEPS program, and afterwards it occurred to me, and I guess I never looked at her that way. My office mate for 2 years, actually, she had no arms, and I didn't even think about her as a special needs person. She was just wonderful, and we were attorneys working together, and she became a judge, and to this day we still keep in touch. So I learned a lot from her. We have great schools here, and I want to continue maintaining the wonderful education we have and continue the same thing for the complexity we face in the 21st century. I want to make sure that our kids are happy. That's really important. Are they mentally safe? Do they feel included? Do they feel engaged? Fiscal responsibility is a huge thing. We are concerned about the TIFs, how the property increment value we won't get it as a school district, how it's going to affect our kids, especially because it costs almost $12,000 to educate each child. We have people who want to move into this district because it is great, and so my two things are: I am passionate about education, and I am passionate about public service. And I am on the board and would like to continue to working for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
So I'll answer your question first, legacy. It's never been a personal thing for me. I ran for school board because I was the poor kid in school, and education got me out of my situation. I love education, and I love our community, and I wanted to give back. And I wanted to make changes that I saw that weren't happening when I ran. It's not about, what I've done. What matters to me, if and when I leave this board, is that our students enjoyed their education, and it helped them prepare for their post-secondary career or education, and that our parents were thankful for the education that they got. But the reason that I'm running for re-election is to continue our academic excellence, to be fiscally responsible with your dollars, and to let our students achieve to their greatest potential. I mean, we have the potential to have a much different looking district 2 years from now. Remember, there's 3 seats up this time. There's 4 seats up next time. So our board could look different. Our top administration is going to look much different in 2 years. So we have a lot of challenges in the next couple years, and it requires board members with experience. I feel I bring that with our funding. I understand our district goals and vision and where we need to go to make improvements. And like I said, I will continue to be your advocate locally and at the state level. I'll also continue listening to you and best representing you, because what's most important to me is that our school district remains, as we have been, one of the top 5 districts in the state of Illinois, and I hope to earn your vote for re-election. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin?
Do we get to do rebuttals? No. My legacy would be, I want a district where current students will send their future kids to. I think that would encompass everything we're talking about here. And that would be impactful for me. Look, we must reduce the barriers of entry for school board members. This is an elected volunteer position. We're fortunate to have 5 candidates for 3 positions. Some districts don't have that. We have to campaign for a volunteer job. None of us are raising money. We're spending our own money to do this. So please look in the hallway and take some of the campaign swag we got out there. Please connect for a campaign sign. Visit our websites, Twitter accounts, web pages. We're trying to get out there and be accessible. I think we're doing that. But we need your help in educating the community about these issues. In order to be an effective school board member, one must have experience in the district, the capacity and willingness to serve. And if we have high barriers to that, then less people are going to have the capacity and willingness to serve. He must have the skills and be an advocate for public education generally in this district, both locally and at the state, and be invested in the district. I'm the best candidate to do that, according to my mom. Thank you.
Gautham?
Thank you. Mom endorsed. Awesome. Yesterday I said my wife endorsed me, and I continue to say so. That's my platform. So that's why I'm here. I actually wouldn't be here without, I think none of us would be here without the support of our families. What I just like to be known for, it would be service-oriented, did the right thing, and had fun doing it, right? Of course, we have challenges, and we have some serious challenges within our community with developments going on. The fiscal responsibility is going to be really important. Mental health support for our kids is really top of mind. And also, as I'd mentioned in my opening statement, teacher retention, right? So we do want to think of innovation, and that's what I would bring from the outside, right? My background, I've worked extensively with government officials, mostly on the Aurora side, and I know there are some communication gaps there. I've worked with a lot of nonprofits, and also with my involvement with many community or events, been exposed and worked closely with the 204 school districts, administrators and operations, and even the Parent Diversity Advisory Council. I believe this experience has prepared me well for a position on the school board, and I ask for your support. I got a few postcards out there, so yeah. Look forward to April 2nd, as we are all going to sit together and find out the results. But for me, it's all about giving back to the community, and that's in a nutshell who I am. What I bring to the table is something new to the board. And if you want to choose for some innovation, if you're happy with everything being exactly the way it is, that's fine too. But I will bring a breath of fresh air. That's me. Gautham GB Patia, #1 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night and good luck.